I think let's just get started. So hello, everyone, and thank you for taking time out from your busy calendars to join us. We get asked this question very often, so let me address that immediately. This session is being recorded. So if you somehow can't join us for the entire 45 minutes or so, or if you would like to share this later with a colleague who was not able to join, you can come back to our Turnkey website and access the recording there. I believe you will also be emailed a copy after the session ends. Okay. So welcome to this session called SAP Security, Why Now? What we can learn from the past 12 months. My name is Melissa Tan. I am a senior project manager at Turnkey Consulting based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Turnkey Consulting specializes in risk management, cybersecurity, and identity access management. And we partner various providers, including Onapsis, to meet any SAP security, GRC, or identity challenge. Today, I'm joined by Onapsis, and Onapsis is the market leader in SAP cybersecurity, threat detection, and vulnerability management. I'm your host for today, and do remember that as we're going through this session, there will be time for Q&A, questions and answers. So if at any time something pops into your head, please feel free to use the Q&A box that should be visible at the bottom of your screen and pop your question there. And towards the end, we will invite Curtis to respond. I also do have Nick and Louis, who are the directors of Turnkey Malaysia, on the call. They will also help with answering the questions and sharing their experience with implementing Onapsis for clients. So in today's session, we will be covering a number of topics. So what threats are SAP customers facing now? We will be looking back at the past year or two just to discuss what some of those threats were. Why do we need to act now? Are there threats that we need to remain vigilant against? And what tools can organizations install? Or maybe, what kind of changes do customers need to make, either in their processes or in how their team is structured, in order to ensure enough focus and attention are given to managing vulnerabilities and threat detection in your workplace. Okay. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Curtis to take you through the information. Curtis?
All right, thank you, Melissa, and thank you everyone for joining us. Certainly a pleasure to speak with you all today. And to kick things off, so again, my name is Curtis Parker, field CTO here at Onapsis. So it's a pleasure to have an opportunity to tell you about who we are and what we do. So to kick things off, I just wanted to highlight basically our position in the market, just give you an overview if you have not heard of Onapsis before. We were founded in 2009, and we're headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. But we do have global offices in Argentina, Singapore, and Germany as well. So as Melissa said, we are the market leader in helping organizations to secure their business critical applications. 20% of the Fortune 100 do rely on Onapsis with our specialty in protecting business critical applications. And just recently at RSA this year, Onapsis was named the market leader in ERP security by the Cyber Defense magazine. So we're happy to have achieved that award. And these are just a small set on the right, a small set of customers. Just wanted to highlight some of the names of who we are protecting and helping to secure their SAP with the Onapsis platform. So here, we kind of call this slide the perfect storm. But as we think about SAP, and even in the traditional sense of cybersecurity, certainly cyber folks will understand that threats are constantly evolving. The threat landscape is constantly evolving. But as it relates to SAP systems have been in place for a number of years in a lot of cases, and they seem to be, in most cases in one's mind, running fairly well. However, we want to look at our environments, look at the organizations, look at how environments are changing within SAP as things occur like moving to the cloud from on-premise environments. If you think about all of these changes, SAP is actually not as safe as we thought it was. It's not as protected as we thought it was. So you may have cases where, there are SAP environments that are air-gapped. You may think that a connection to the outside world is disconnected, so my SAP environment is fine. And maybe the attackers, because of that air-gapped configuration, maybe the attackers aren't targeting you or targeting an organization and not able to do damage. That thought might be there. But the thing is, over the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of changes. There are a lot of new initiatives going on around SAP applications, and it's causing organizations to take a closer look from a security and compliance perspective at how our existing models around security may need to be updated or may need to change. So, for example, with the cloud, a lot of organizations these days have several, migration initiatives to move to S/4HANA, compared to a number of years ago. A lot of organizations we're seeing are taking on these migration projects, and this is a new connection, a new door or entry point where you're kind of exposing the SAP application or the SAP landscape, to the internet. So, that brings a lot of additional risk. From a compliance perspective, there's certainly a lot of different regulatory regulations and personal data that certainly run through the SAP system. So as you increase to the cloud, or you are making enhancements to your security model, or introducing risks that kind of test that model, this could affect our compliance or an organization's status as it relates to a particular regulation. So this is another change, another risk that we want to make sure that we're mindful of as it relates to SAP. And certainly the cyber attacks, right? The attackers are constantly on the move. We've seen attacks in certain cases that are revealing that SAP knowledge is within certain attack groups. So all these things are changing every day, and without the proper tools in place, it's really hard to monitor for just the current state or the posture of the organization due to all of these changes. But it's also hard or difficult without the right tools in place to do this on a continuous basis, as so much is changing these days, within our SAP landscapes. So, we talked a little bit about some of the business critical applications like SAP and how there's increased risk to organizations. However, you do need to know that SAP is an attractive target. So this is a timeline showing what a view from the ONAPSIS perspective of the threats that are out there. And over the past 10 years, we've definitely seen an increase in attacks. Just in the past 5 years alone, there have been 5 U.S. CERT alerts issued by the United States Computer Emergency Readiness Team. So, if you look at some of these, again, we're not going to go into every alert here or all the details of these threats on the webinar, but I just want you to know that attackers are definitely taking notice. We're seeing it within our research labs here at ONAPSIS, and it's threatening our SAP landscapes, and it's challenging us to help our customers, remain secure and compliant. So I mentioned our research lab. This is the power behind our platform, our ONAPSIS platform, and our products, because we have a dedicated team that is focused on monitoring the threat landscape in real time for threats. And this allows us to be thought leaders in the market. This allows us to leverage our partners like Turnkey to provide this type of thought leadership and awareness of what is going on in the market. So with that said, excuse me, I wanted to talk a little bit more about our threat intelligence and provide you an update based on real world scenarios that are going on in the market. So when we talk about SAP and cybersecurity, we often use the words crown jewels because the SAP environment does really hold the crown jewels for the organization. And these attacks that we're seeing, we're actually able to see these attacks through a live SAP environment that we have called the Threat Intel Cloud. And these are systems that we kind of have sitting out there, and we're able to basically sit back and watch attackers kind of do their thing and watch their tactics, the tools they're using, the behaviors that they're carrying out in order to leverage a vulnerability, ultimately to exploit the system and perform some malicious intent. And often we've observed that, for example, within 72 hours of a new SAP system, or 72 hours of a patch being released by SAP, in less than 72 hours, that system is being exploited. So they're already trying to attack. And then within 3 hours, in less than 3 hours of a new system coming online, we're seeing these vulnerabilities, being exploited already. So we have this threat intelligence cloud of SAP systems that we have stretched out across the globe, across 18 countries. It really does allow us to observe, hands-on attacks. We've seen over 400 different types of confirmed exploitations, and a couple of them we're going to get into today. So, we really use this to be proactive. First of all, provide threat intelligence, but be proactive in our products, and all of our customers get to benefit from this intelligence. So this is something very interesting here. So if you look at this slide, I want you to know that, think about your traditional security defenses or approaches. When it comes to SAP, these approaches are not as effective as we think, or one would think, because of all of the complexity and specifically the application layer of SAP. Your traditional vulnerability management solutions, maybe firewalls or other security systems that you have focusing on the network or the operating system or the endpoint itself, is not able to look at and protect the application layer of SAP. So this slide is just is trying to highlight that, and it's for this reason regarding the application layer that the attackers also understand this, and they also understand that it's very hard to a manual effort to patch a system, patch it within a reasonable, a timely manner. And oftentimes for a team such as the basis team or the teams, monitoring the readiness and the uptime of the SAP systems, it's a cumbersome task, a very intense task to try to figure out which systems need what patches, for example. So the attackers know this, and in fact, I've seen examples of SAP systems, being exploited with just a simple use of a particular use of 6 lines of custom code within the landscape, of applications being developed. So, that's another angle that we need to be concerned with as it relates to our traditional security systems. There's a lot of custom code being developed within SAP, as you know, and these systems are just not able to detect when there's a vulnerability or an unauthorized change going on, or something that is malicious happening within the application layer of SAP. So I just wanted to, and we kind of call this the blind spot. So usually within the SAP side of the house and your InfoSec teams, either the InfoSec team doesn't know enough about SAP, or our SAP teams are not necessarily focused on cyber. So in the middle is where we're trying to, and where we help organizations join together and make that connection. And our platform, which we'll learn more about later, helps accomplish that. So as we think about the cost, so just wanted to share some information about the cost of a cyber attack, and certainly it can be catastrophic. So as we hear about all of these different risks, all of these different challenges, doing nothing is really not an option. And if you think that you're okay, it's how do you, the question would be, how do you know without the right tools in place? Can you confidently report to the board or to the leadership level, to the executives, on this blind spot and provide a status of the posture? Do we have the right tools to protect the organization, to protect our crown jewels? So as I mentioned before, this is especially important as it relates to custom code being developed. If there's a vulnerability there, as you can see, any data loss, system outages related to a vulnerability being exploited within SAP can be absolutely catastrophic. So we want to prevent disruption to the business, as I'm sure we all do, but we want to make sure that we have tools and processes in place as code is being developed, or just on a continuous basis monitoring your SAP environment. Should an exploit be attempted to be exploited, we want to make sure that we have the tools in place to be able to do that. So not just a one-time type of assessment, but we want to lead to doing this on a more continuous basis. So here's how we help, and we help our customers with our Napsys platform. And this helps to address a lot of these pain points and challenges related to, SAP itself in monitoring the landscape and protecting the landscape, but also around secure application development as well. And the way we do this is within this structure here, represented on the screen in this slide, to secure the SAP application. So at the foundation level, you can see covering the extended enterprise. We do support SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, for example. And we do support your landscape, whether it's in the cloud, on premises, or in a hybrid environment. So there are 4 products that we do offer here at Napsys, and one is called Assess. And this is our SAP vulnerability management solution. Then we have Defend, which is our continuous threat monitoring of SAP solution. And then we have Control. Control is all about DevSecOps and identifying and running health checks on the custom code as it moves from development to QA and into production, not only at each stage, but along the way. So if, for example, developers developing a custom application, before it moves into QA, the control product will be able to perform a static analysis and a sort of a health check at that stage to make sure it's not going to impact the QA environment, and so on and so forth as we move towards the production environment. And then Defend is there, right? And Assess are there to continually assess, and Defend is also going to continually monitor for threats. But we also can monitor your transport systems as well. So the control product kind of comes in 2 flavors: Control for code, and then Control for the transport inspection. And then lastly, we have comply. And comply is all about automating regulatory compliance requirements. So we do have what we call shipped policies that do come out of the box for monitoring and helping you to remain compliant with, SOX or NIST or various ISO certifications. For example, these all come out of the box to monitor, excuse me, and continually assess for continuous compliance. So many organizations, when they're getting started with us, and Turnkey as well, when they're partnering with us to deliver these solutions, they generally kind of start with with an assessment. Excuse me. That's usually a great place to start because it allows you to get a snapshot, get a look at the environment, see what the vulnerabilities are, and create a plan and a roadmap to address them. Okay, so now wanted to provide some insight into some threats that, although this may say 2020, these threats, in particular here, the recon vulnerability is still alive and in play. We're still seeing organizations affected by this. So I wanted to highlight this particular vulnerability to you, which directly affects SAP. So if you don't know, maybe we just start off with what the SAP recon vulnerability is. So first and foremost, if you're familiar with the CVSS vulnerability score, this is a critical vulnerability specifically for SAP that received the highest score of 10. And this is affecting a default component that's present in just about every SAP application running the SAP NetWeaver, excuse me, Java technology stack. A successful exploit of this particular vulnerability can impact your SAP, the confidentiality, integrity, and the availability of your SAP systems. So for example, this particular attack can be executed in an unauthenticated fashion. So there are no credentials that are needed for an attacker to take advantage of this vulnerability. Things they can do are bypass segregation of duties, your SODs, as well as your access controls. And the kind of the nasty thing about this particular vulnerability is that they generally will leave no trace behind. So it'll be very hard without the right tools to detect this type of attack. If you're not, familiar with the characteristics or what to look for, or don't have the right tools in place. So we want to be able to protect against these malicious activities so that, and also I'll give you an idea of some of the things that, could happen as well. Maybe if this attack is successful, there may be a loss of financial records or PII information, for example, all these things that we do not want to have happen. So this is a timeline of how we, ONAPSIS, were the first to detect this particular vulnerability and how we collaborated with SAP as well to prepare and release the patch. But even before then, before the patch was released, we update, excuse me, our products. We update our assess and defend products so that the assess product can continuously assess the environment and the entire landscape for this particular vulnerability. It also allows and introduces a point, since this was a 0-day exploit, for our customers to be protected and have a protection mechanism in place until SAP release the patch. So we automatically update our products every time we see something like this. And then defend also updates. We also update our defend product policies as well for continuous monitoring of this particular threat. It will tell you if someone is actually trying to execute this recon vulnerability in the environment. So as you see along the timeline, we've done a lot of work in the industry, cybersecurity industry, but more specifically around SAP lot of thought leadership, and we even released a free recon vulnerability self-assessment tool. Our Onapsis Research Lab again came through with that and offered as an offering a free assessment tool to help customers if they need it. Okay, so in more recent news, this is one that we've been talking about this year. There's a new threat that our research labs was able to uncover, and this one is affecting the SAP Communication Manager, or the ICM. This vulnerability is called ICMAD. Okay, so as we look across this timeline, you kind of get a sense of the collaborative effort between our research lab and SAP, very similar to the recon vulnerability that we looked at previously. So if you're not familiar with the SAP Internet Communication Manager, this is really critical because to understand, because this one is the Internet Communication Manager, or the ICM, is really the gateway to the outside world. So it's a key component of the SAP NetWeaver, but this ensures communication between the systems, the SAP system, and the outside world. So if there's mobile devices, applications being served, externally, this is a critical and key component. And it's really a requirement as part of the SAP NetWeaver to communicate using with the internet using HTTP. So it's usually on by default. So this exposure is just there by default, and it's not something that you can just kind of say, well, we'll just turn it off. Well, the effect of that in how all the systems and users are interacting with your SAP landscape, it just wouldn't be productive. It would, in fact, impact the productivity of your business. So this is a tricky one because, again, without the right tools in place to detect the behaviors and these characteristics, it would be very difficult to detect something like this. But again, within our products, we have out-of-the-box policies that as soon as you run, for example, a vulnerability assessment policy, it's automatically going to be able to look for, attacks such as this, or vulnerabilities such as this within the landscape. Okay, so we wanted to talk about what we're seeing in the market, wanted to talk about certain tools that we have that can help your organization. We talked about our assess product, talked about our defend products, our control products, and compliance solutions. These are all solutions that we're helping customers secure their SAP landscapes with every day. And we're just able to, get started or help you get started very easily, partnering with Turnkey here. Certainly, we've been in business for, over a decade, helping organizations protect their business critical applications. And, our folks here at Turnkey certainly have the resources as well and are ready to provide solutions to help you along your journey to improve your overall SAP cybersecurity posture as well. So we look forward to working with you, look forward to hearing from you. For now, I think I'll pass it back to Melissa to see if we have any questions from the attendees.
Thank you, Curtis. Very, very insightful indeed. The last slide there, you were mentioning the 4 products, the assess, defend, comply, the last one. We actually do have a question related to the comply solution. A question about what regional frameworks are available to meet the local regulatory requirements. And the asker is from Australia, so he's more interested in the Australian market. So regulatory frameworks for Australia.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Melissa? I'm sorry. Was it about what regulatory frameworks we support?
Yes, correct. So we named the comply product. You were talking about how it will use local regulatory requirements like SOX, etc. So the asker was asking about whether, I guess, whether the Australian requirements are included.
Yeah, so we do have global requirements shipped out of the box. There's actually, in fact, about 15 to 20 shipped compliance policies that we do have. But the nice thing about the comply product is you can actually build your own compliance policies as well. So it's very easy. We call it cloning a policy. So there may be certain policies that exist for that region right now, but you could very easily sort of tune and customize that policy based on data that we provide you, or if you're working with your audit team, for example, or you're working with Turnkey, for example, and you need to customize these policies, these compliance policies, you can definitely do that.
Curtis, Nick Vallis here, just to jump in.
Sure.
Just to mention a good example, me sort of working in Australia in the past, is sort of the data privacy acts, which are sort of relevant where a lot of the businesses need to comply. What you're correct, what you said is you can customize a lot of the policies that are available, but one good example where we've done this is the GDPR policy around data privacy, which obviously is something that gets pushed by the the European, UK market. So that's something that you can retrofit or sort of apply if there are sort of local legislation or governance requirements for companies or businesses in Australia. So there is I think it's a 1988 Act, Data Privacy Act in Australia, which regulates how business treats data, and hence ANAPSIS, and I've seen this in action, depending on the industry and what policies are applicable. It could be an energy company or any other industry. You can customize that, but a lot of that is already delivered from ANAPSIS in regards to the policy. So the rules are already there, and you can run the scans against those policies. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And indeed, James, if you feel that we haven't answered your question specifically, feel free to drop in another question into the box. Another question comes from view, and he's asking whether the tool continuously monitors the system. And second part was whether the tool will send alerts for example, if there's a client meeting or if there's an assignment of a set op profile, etc.
Yes. So, excuse me. Our assessments, and there's different layers, right? So certainly, our assess products is always, as I mentioned, that great first step to continuously assess the environment, right? And assess and comply usually are very close together within our customer environments to continuously monitor for one, vulnerabilities, and then two, compliance. But we also want to remember, depending on the use case, when we say continuously monitor, if it's also for the things like the recon vulnerability, for example, or that IC-MAD, the continuous recognition of a threat, that's trying to become active, or an attacker is actually trying to exploit that within your environment, we want to bring in defend for that. And then any transactions that are occurring, any misuse or elevated privileges within SAP that are going on throughout the landscape, it's going to alert you against all of that. And you can customize alerts. Oh, and one other thing that I did mention as well, I mean, the product will do everything that we're discussing today, but we also integrate with certain workflows. Like if you're using ServiceNow, for example, right within the platform, you can leverage this integration to assign, if we see ICMAD out there in the environment. We actually do provide not only that we see the vulnerability, but we also provide you the description of what's happening, the business impact, and the step-by-step instructions to correct this within the SAP environment.
Yeah. Just to add, Curtis, this is Luis. So we are in the midst of implementing this solution for a power company in Malaysia. So this is one of the prerequisites here, continuous monitoring. And this tool does or is able to provide that real-time monitoring as well. And we're also even talking about integration with solution manager, and also where the status is being sent across and other SIM solution as well. So just to reiterate what you have said, this tool does do the monitoring and real time as well.
Yes.
Then there's a follow-on question from the original asker, which is whether there's going to be any impact on performance.
No, well, depending on the architecture. So at the most basic level, I would say within our architecture, we're actually protecting performance. We're very non-intrusive to the SAP environment. We only require two components, which is basically our console and a sensor that is not directly hooking in, for example, into the transport system, for example, as we may see with some other solutions. So we do protect the performance of the systems that are going on. Now, Nick, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from your perspective and implementations that you've done with regards to performance.
Yeah, just from my end, what I've noticed from the very beginning, working for Napsys many years ago, they are sort of moving towards a zero footprint type of policy when it comes to implementing the solutions. Most, customers, especially the owners or the system owners, get a little bit, I'll say, anxious when you try to implement or add, a new transport or some code and connect a solution. So they do get quite anxious, and there's a lot of overhead as well and red tape sometimes. So I am seeing that becoming less, where you do have a cockpit, sort of a central instance that sits somewhere, normally a Solman box, which is obviously not heavily used, and then having that sort of then sort of RFC connected to some of the target systems. A lot of that process and a lot of that work is happening on the actual the system where you're hosting the solution, and all it's doing is basically just RFC and talking to the target systems, just gathering those specific data elements or data that's required in order for the scanning or for the tool to work. So it is slowly moving into more of a zero footprint type of scenario, and that's what I've noticed over the last couple of years. So nothing to implement and then into development and then transport. There is that still that need, but not as heavily as it used to be. So that's been refined as we speak.
Thank you, Nick. Hope that clarifies for you, Yuresh. If not, feel free to put in your follow-up questions in there. Okay, we have one more question. How long does it normally take to implement a Napsys solution, and what are the major challenges during implementation?
Nick, you want to take that one?
I think I'll pass on across to Lois, saying that he's in the midst of implementing one at the moment. And he's probably feels the challenges.
Yeah, sure. No worries. I can tell all of you is that the implementation of the individual component is very quick. Yeah? You can get it done just for one system. I would say a day, or less. Yeah, but I think the major challenge that we have is the preparation work up front. So you need to have a lot of discussion and educate the clients. Because the components that is installed, you need to, there's a lot of prep work up front. So if you ask me, typically the whole end-to-end cycle to get it implemented and for them to use it comfortably, I would say in the midst of about a month or 1 month and a half. Yeah.
Yeah,
so right. Melissa, you can add. I mean, you were there in a project with me as well.
Yeah, so I'm actually managing that implementation, and indeed, what Luis mentioned is quite correct. After the pre-work and it's all done, the actual implementation, and he mentioned 1 month. That's actually into dev, quality, and production. So it's actually quite rapid. usually takes, for some smaller systems, just a couple of hours. We do it after office hours, right? A couple of hours, and if it's production, again, overnight, done within 6 hours or less than 12 hours. Yeah. So the challenge that I actually noticed, what actually takes more time, is the prep work, as Louise mentioned, but also a lot of change management. Change as in business readiness change, people's acceptance to it. So usually this solution is obviously the cybersecurity team who's very interested to get it throughout the organization. And the resistance is obviously the system owners of those SAP systems, because once this is in their environment, they can be tracked if there are any, it's good that there any vulnerabilities can be identified, but then it's the effort then to remediate it that may take a really long time. And it's of course meaning a lot more effort on the team to remediate it according to the expectations of the cybersecurity team. So for me, honestly, the actual technical implementation, quite straightforward, but you need to factor in quite a lot of time with change management and user expectation management. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Okay, there's one more question. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so how can Onapsis Solutions help support my S4HANA migration? Is this something Curtis can take?
Yeah, definitely. So we can help organizations. I think what we're seeing is either, we'd love to be a part of that planning, right? The plan to get there so that we can start off secure from the beginning as you move to the cloud. So, that's the first thing I would say. So, there's a responsibility when you're moving to RISE, for example, where SAP is going to take care of certain responsibilities, but there's a large part that customers are also responsible for, and a lot of it has to do with in some cases the custom applications being developed, or data, or authorizations. You still have to kind of maintain the stability or the security of your environment. There's a lot that you need to still focus on. So, with us and, for example, Turnkey together with you along that journey, if you're starting off, we'd love to be there with you to get ahead of some of the things Melissa and Luis and the team were talking about, having these conversations to prep for that so that we start off secure. Now, if you've already, or have migrated to S4HANA or to the cloud, for example, that's okay too. We can still insert a process to where we call it kind of getting clean, to where we can assess the environment, help to provide the right reports and information to you so you understand the situation or the status, the posture of your environment, create a plan on how we're going to address that. That kind of puts a pause on any new vulnerabilities or opportunities for misuse, or I'll just say vulnerabilities to go unnoticed. So when you kind of do that, the scale is actually going to reverse to where we're going to help you stay clean from here on out. So kind of two ways to look at it, but we have processes and personnel that can support either one of those scenarios along your journey to HANA. HANA.
Thank you, Curtis. So we are actually almost at time, and I don't see any other questions coming through. But if at any time after this you suddenly think of something that you would like to ask, please feel free to reach out to the contacts that's shown on the screen right now. And just a reminder that this session is being recorded. So again, I think you will be emailed a copy of this when it ends. If not, you can go to our Turnkey website and access the recording there. And you can also share that recording out to your colleagues who were unable to attend. So with that, I thank you very, very much for your participation and attendance here. Thank you very much, Curtis, as well for the session. And thank you to Nick and Louis for helping with the questions. With that, I bid you a good afternoon and good morning or even good evening. And wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Bye then.
Take care.